What if the royal family just declared Prince Harry and Meghan Markle out of the family for good? Under a grey and uncertain London sky, inside the high walls of Buckingham Palace, something unprecedented was brewing, something that would rupture not just protocol, but the very meaning of family inside the House of Windsor. The world had seen many royal confrontations over the years, abdications, affairs, divorces, scandals. But what unfolded in secret chambers of the palace in early 2025 would mark a chilling new chapter. Not a tabloid headline, not an orchestrated media stunt, but an unfiltered declaration from one of the firm's most unshakable pillars, Princess Anne. And it wasn't whispered. It wasn't subtle. It was a cold, deliberate statement aimed like an arrow at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. You are not our family. The word struck with a finality that even the most hardened royal aides hadn't anticipated. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. There were no cameras rolling, no dramatic royal music playing in the background, just a polished oak table, the aged echo of footsteps in marbled halls, and the biting truth that Princess Anne had spent years holding back. But now, she wasn't just voicing disapproval. She was leading a private royal vote to strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children, Archie and Lilibet, of any claim to the HRH title permanently. And with it, she was severing what little thread of royal legitimacy they had left. For decades, Princess Anne had lived in the shadows of royal men. She was born into a system that overlooked her for the throne, pushed her aside during moments of royal reshuffling, and rarely gave her the headlines. But Anne had something far more enduring than fame: integrity. While Harry and Meghan were making Netflix deals, podcasting grievances, and publishing bombshell memoirs, and was quietly safeguarding the monarchy's backbone, its traditions, values, and above all, its resilience in the face of betrayal. What made her outbursts so damning wasn't just the words themselves, it was who said them. And, often considered the monarchy's iron-willed soldier, doesn't erupt without calculation. She doesn't speak in fury. She speaks in resolve. And when she told Harry that he was no longer family, she wasn't venting. She was declaring a verdict. Her tone, by all leaked accounts, was neither emotional nor angry. It was definitive. I see. Irreversible. But how did we get here? How did a prince, once the world's favorite royal bachelor, become a man whose own aunt now wants to legally erase his children from the line of royal legacy? And what possessed Princess Anne, a woman known for stoic professionalism and almost obsessive loyalty to the crown, to break the unspoken code of discretion that has defined the royal family for centuries? The storm didn't begin in 2025. It had been gathering clouds since the day Harry and Meghan announced they were stepping back from royal duties in early 2020. At the time, many thought the move was just a modern-day adjustment, a way for the younger royals to carve their own path without the suffocating expectations of palace life. But it wasn't a quiet exit. It was messy, explosive, defiant. The Oprah interview, accusations of racism from within the palace, mental health revelations, public bashing of family members, and a tell-all memoir titled Spare, each move chipped away at the institution and had spent her entire life defending. Unlike others who may have tried to manage the fallout through private appeals or carefully crafted public relations statements, and remained silent. She didn't comment when Meghan compared palace life to imprisonment. She didn't speak when Harry accused Charles of emotional neglect. And she certainly didn't chime in when the press speculated about Archie and Lilibet's royal titles. But her silence wasn't consent, it was preparation. Insiders say that by late 2024, Princess Anne had begun confiding in close aides and allies within the royal circle that something had to be done. Not for the sake of revenge, not to shame Harry, but to protect the crown from what she viewed as an existential threat. In her mind, granting royal titles to the children of a couple who had actively undermined the institution wasn't just hypocritical, it was dangerous. And if no one else would speak the truth, she would. But no one expected her to go this far. Not even Charles, reportedly. Not even William, who has had his own icy relationship with Harry in the years since Megxit. The idea of a secret royal council vote, chaired by Anne herself, designed specifically to block HRH status for Archie and Lilibet, sounded like something from a Netflix drama. Yet it happened. And not only did it happen, it passed. Quietly. Formally. Permanently. According to palace insiders, the vote was more than symbolic. It was binding. It was designed to prevent any future attempts by Meghan or Harry to reclaim royal legitimacy through their children. That means even if Charles were to abdicate or pass away, and William took the throne, the ruling would stand. Archie and Lilibet would remain commoners, not out of hatred and clarified privately, but out of principle. Titles are earned through service and loyalty, not birth alone. The gravity of this act cannot be overstated. In royal terms, titles aren't just names, they're identity, privilege, status, and legacy. For centuries, families have fought bitterly over dukedoms, viscountcies, and HRH distinctions. By cutting Archie and Lilibet off, and has effectively ensured that the Sussex line is severed from any practical influence inside the monarchy. The move doesn't remove their bloodline, but it robs it of weight, visibility, and eventual leverage. And it raises the unavoidable question: if the monarchy is willing to deny children their birthright to preserve integrity, what else are they willing to do to protect the crown from modern rebellion? The media, predictably, exploded. Some outlets painted her as heartless, a bitter royal bulldog enforcing archaic rules. Others praised her as the last real defender of the monarchy. Twitter trended with hashtags like #NotOurFamily, #AndTheIronPrincess, and #RoyalPurge. Across breakfast tables in Britain, people weren't just discussing gossip, they were debating justice, loyalty, family, and legacy. And Harry? According to sources close to him, he was devastated, blindsided, even angry. Not because of the titles themselves, but because of the implications. He reportedly told a friend, "If and thinks my children aren't part of the family, what does that say about me?" Meghan's reaction, on the other hand, was sharper. She allegedly told Confidants, "We've been preparing for this. We don't need their titles. We'll build our own legacy." But beneath the confidence, aides say, she was rattled. Meghan has always understood the power of perception, and losing a royal title, especially for her children, isn't just a blow to prestige. It's a blow to narrative. This wasn't just a family squabble. It was a decisive power play, a moment in royal history where bloodlines, betrayal, and the burden of legacy collided. Princess Anne, in that dimly lit room inside Buckingham Palace, didn't just sever ties. She redefined what it means to be royal in the 21st century. And in doing so, she reminded the world that while modernity might reshape the institution, it won't erase its spine. As viewers of this video, you're about to witness the full depth of this royal reckoning. You'll hear from insiders who were present in the room when the vote was cast. You'll learn the history behind royal titles and why this decision changes everything. And most importantly, you'll uncover the deeper truth behind the words, "You are not our family," what they meant, who they were aimed at, and why they may echo through the halls of Windsor long after this generation is gone. Let's dive deeper. Because this story isn't just about titles. It's about the collapse of trust, the limits of forgiveness, and the brutal force of a monarchy determined to survive, even if it means cutting off its own. Princess Anne was never destined to be queen, but no one in the royal family has worn the crown of duty more tightly than she has. From a young age, and Elizabeth Alice Louise carved out her role not in the spotlight, but in the shadowy corridors of responsibility and restraint. She never asked for attention, nor did she chase it. While her brothers drew media headlines, scandals, and reverence, and made herself indispensable to the monarchy not through titles or inheritance, but through a relentless commitment to service. It's that unwavering loyalty that makes her latest actions toward Prince Harry and Meghan Markle not only devastating, but entirely believable. To understand the depth of her decision to strip Archie and Lilibet of potential royal titles and publicly cut off Harry's family, we must first understand Anne herself. She's not a woman easily moved by pettiness or emotion. Her principles are forged in something older than tabloids or Twitter storms. They're born out of discipline, pride, and a lifetime of watching her mother, Queen Elizabeth II, weather political tempests and personal tragedies with stoic resolve. Anne was born in 1950, just 3 years before her mother ascended the throne. From the start, she was treated not as a fragile princess, but as an extension of the royal institution. While Prince Charles was groomed as heir, and was molded as a stabilizer, and she never faltered in that role. Even during the monarchy's most turbulent years, Diana's death, Prince Andrew's scandals, Meghan and Harry's exit, and remained a force of calm. Not passive, but silent. Not indifferent, but unmoved by drama. That silence, it turns out, was storing something far more powerful than commentary. It was storing judgment. By the age of 18, and had already begun official royal duties. Over the following decades, she would complete thousands upon thousands of public engagements, often exceeding even her mother and father in annual counts. She did it with no fuss, no complaints, and most critically, no scandal. Unlike other royals whose names became synonymous with affairs, breakdowns, or money woes, and kept her nose out of the headlines and her hands firmly on the wheel of royal duty, that discipline earned her the nickname, the hardest-working royal, a label she despised not for its truth, but for the implication that others weren't pulling their weight. The heart of Anne's worldview is simple. Being royal is not about being adored, it's about serving. That belief has made her a thorn in the side of more glamour-oriented royals, but a saint to those within the palace who see the monarchy as a public institution, not a private indulgence. So when Harry and Meghan began shifting their royal identity into personal brand territory, when they launched lucrative commercial deals based on their royal status, it didn't just offend Anne. It enraged her. To her, that wasn't evolution. That was betrayal. When Harry and Meghan walked away from the royal family in 2020 and remained silent, she didn't attend the infamous Sandringham Summit where the Queen, Charles, William, and Harry hammered out the terms of the couple's departure. But according to former palace aides, and was briefed immediately after, her response was characteristically terse. "This is not how we do things," she reportedly said. It wasn't just the exit, it was the method. The televised interviews, the emotional appeals, the global brand deals, these things reeked of what Anne saw as exploitation. It wasn't just an affront to tradition. It was a breach of contract with the British people. Her stance hardened when Meghan and Harry began throwing allegations toward the institution that Anne had spent her life upholding. Racism within the royal family, emotional neglect, and bureaucratic cruelty, these were accusations that stained more than just reputations. They weakened the very scaffolding of the monarchy. And, known for her near-fanatical belief in restraint and dignity, reportedly considered their media campaign a disgraceful act of self-interest, and believes in consequences, not for revenge, but for balance. In her mind, if you abandon your role, you forfeit its privileges. And if you attack the institution, you cannot expect it to shield you. That's why when the question of Archie and Lilibet's titles came up following Queen Elizabeth's passing, Anne's answer was immediate and firm. They do not qualify. Not because they are children, not because of race, but because of lineage, loyalty, and choices made by their parents. The tragedy, perhaps, is that Anne once had a warm relationship with Harry. As a child, he gravitated toward her dry humor and zero-nonsense demeanor. She, in turn, appreciated his playfulness and mischief. He reminded her of herself in many ways, unfiltered, authentic, uncomfortable with pretense. But as Harry aged, the similarities faded, and their values began to diverge. While Anne doubled down on institutional service, Harry began searching for identity and purpose beyond the crown. Their bond, quietly but decisively, unraveled. Meghan's arrival didn't help. It's not that Anne opposed Meghan personally. Palace insiders say Anne initially welcomed Meghan in the same spirit she welcomed others, cordially but reserved. But Anne's radar for opportunism is sharp. Within months, she reportedly sensed that Meghan was more interested in the optics of royalty than the burden of it. She kept her observations private, but she didn't forget them. And as the Sussexes began detaching from the institution, and grew more convinced that Meghan's influence was not a modernizing force, but a destabilizing one. To Anne, titles must reflect service. Harry's children, while undeniably royal by blood, were being raised entirely outside the royal system, geographically, culturally, and morally. They were not participating in public duties. They were not learning the rituals of tradition. They were, in every practical sense, civilians. And yet their parents wanted the privileges that came with being royal. It was a contradiction and could not abide. When whispers of a royal council began in late 2024, it was Anne who insisted that the question of titles be addressed formally. No backroom consensus, no vague agreements. A vote, a record, a decision. She reportedly told Charles that indecision would invite chaos. If the monarchy was to survive the modern age, it had to draw its lines clearly. And the first line, in her view, was against those who had walked away but still wanted to collect on the legacy they left behind. The council met in early 2025. Charles, though emotionally torn, allowed the vote to proceed. William stayed largely silent, observers say, though he showed clear signs of internal conflict. It was Anne, however, who steered the room. Her argument was laid out with clarity. Granting HRH status to Archie and Lilibet would signal to the world that you can insult the crown, abandon it, monetize your exit, and still keep the perks. That, she warned, would set a dangerous precedent for future generations. The vote passed. And with that, and did something few royals had the courage to do, she made personal accountability the new bar for privilege. It wasn't cruel. It was constitutional in her mind. It was the monarchy practicing what it preaches. Her move reverberated far beyond palace gates. To some, she became a villain, cold, merciless, outdated. To others, she became a hero, the last royal willing to take a stand for tradition in a world obsessed with personal freedom. But to Anne, the noise didn't matter. She had done her job. Not as a sister, not as an aunt, but as a royal. And that, perhaps, is what hurts Harry most. Because Anne wasn't just saying his children don't belong in the royal family. She was saying he doesn't either. The grandeur of Buckingham Palace has witnessed coronations, royal births, and state funerals. But behind its gilded facade lies a far colder, more pragmatic space, one built not for spectacle, but for strategy. It was in this hushed and high-security environment that the secret Royal Council meeting took place. A meeting so classified, even some senior aides weren't initially made aware. There were no press releases, no ceremonial flair. Only locked doors, confidential invitations, and a sharp sense among insiders that this was not just another royal gathering. This was, in every sense, an institutional reckoning. By early February 2025, the atmosphere within the palace was tense and electrified with whispers. Leaks had been emerging from Montecito that Meghan and Harry were quietly exploring legal avenues in both the UK and the US to demand official recognition of royal titles for Archie and Lilibet. The couple's legal advisors were allegedly preparing arguments based on precedent and lineage, hoping to force the monarchy's hand into submission or compromise. For Princess Anne, this was more than a PR challenge, it was a constitutional threat. A possible legal storm that could drag the monarchy through more months, perhaps years, of bitter public conflict. That's when the idea of a closed royal council vote began circulating. And, reportedly tired of behind-the-scenes debates and Charles's emotional waffling, initiated a motion for an internal, binding decision, not to be made public, but to be final. This wasn't a parliamentary matter or something for the Prime Minister to weigh in on. This was internal royal business, a safeguarding of the monarchy's structural integrity, and it would be decided not by public opinion but by those who had sworn loyalty to the crown. Invitations were discreetly dispatched to a select group of royal stakeholders. These included King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and a few senior courtiers with knowledge of constitutional precedents. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon to ensure fewer eyes, minimal foot traffic, and the possibility of maintaining secrecy over the weekend. Even many palace staff assumed it was a routine family briefing. But the room in which they gathered, the Privy Council chamber, was anything but casual. This chamber, typically reserved for delicate discussions on succession, royal charters, and international protocol, had not hosted a meeting of this nature in decades. Armed guards were stationed at all entrances. Electronic devices were banned. Attendees were sworn to secrecy under formal royal protocol. The stakes were not just symbolic, they were binding. Whatever outcome the room reached would be implemented by the king, backed by internal documentation and archived as a sealed royal record. At the head of the long table sat King Charles, visibly aged by the past few months of familial and political chaos. His posture was solemn. He reportedly said very little that day. On his right sat Queen Camilla, a quiet observer, and on his left, Princess Anne, stone-faced, composed, and prepared with a dossier of documentation, historical precedents, and statements. Across from them sat Prince William and Prince Edward, both attempting neutrality, though clearly weighed down by the emotional cost of what they were about to decide. And opened the meeting with a declaration that cut through the room like a knife. According to insiders, she began with a single sentence: "This is about the crown, not the children." It wasn't an attack on Archie or Lilibet, it was a distinction. She wanted the council to understand that what was being debated wasn't personal vendetta. It was institutional protection. She presented three core arguments. First, that the parents of Archie and Lilibet had formally withdrawn from royal duties, choosing financial independence and autonomy over royal obligation. Second, that they had launched a series of sustained, global attacks against the monarchy, accusing it of racism, emotional abuse, and deception. And third, that by doing so while simultaneously attempting to secure royal titles for their children, they had created a conflict of interest so dangerous it could set a precedent for future royals to exploit the system without contributing to it. And pulled from her notes a historical example from 1917, when King George V issued letters patent to streamline and clarify who could use the titles of prince and princess. She referenced how titles had been withdrawn, modified, or reassigned multiple times in royal history in response to national crises or political concerns. She cited the 1999 removal of the HRH style from Princess Diana following her divorce, not as punishment, but as reclassification. If the monarchy had once adjusted its rules to reflect changed roles, it had every justification to do so now. Prince Edward, known for his quiet thoughtfulness, reportedly voiced concern about the children being punished for the actions of their parents. They didn't ask to be born into this, he said, according to a senior palace source. But Anne, measured and restrained, responded that they weren't being punished. They were being classified according to the reality their parents had chosen. She argued that granting HRH status would elevate them into a structure their parents had abandoned. A royal title is not a trophy. It's a job description, she is said to have remarked. Prince William, who had become more visibly burdened by the day-to-day fallout of Harry's memoir and media campaigns, was less vocal than many expected. He did not champion the motion, but neither did he oppose it. His silence, some interpreted, was a tacit endorsement. Behind closed doors, William had confided to aides his heartbreak over his brother's decisions, especially after Spare painted their childhood in cruel, almost villainous tones. To him, endorsing titles for Archie and Lilibet now would not only reignite public fury, but also reward the strategy of monetized defiance. King Charles, by contrast, remained a ghost of indecision. He reportedly listened intently but contributed only 2 or 3 remarks during the entire hour-and-a-half session. One of them, hauntingly, was, "I want peace, not policy." But, and, as always, countered with pragmatism. "There is no peace when the terms are undefined," she told him. The vote was not conducted in some archaic fashion. There were no scrolls, no pomp. Each member was asked to speak their stance plainly, for the record. And in the end, the majority favored the motion. Archie and Lilibet would not be granted HRH status, now or in the future, under any foreseeable royal circumstance. The decision would be sealed, archived, and enacted quietly through a formal internal directive. After the decision was finalized, and stood up, reportedly bowed slightly to the king, and left the room. No celebration, no vindication, just resolve. She had done what she believed the queen would have done, what duty required. Outside that room, life continued as usual in the palace. Tourists took selfies by the gates. The flag fluttered overhead. Reporters speculated on Meghan's latest Netflix project. But inside, something irreversible had occurred. A verdict had been cast, not by a court, not by tabloids, but by the keepers of the monarchy itself. In the following days, the mood within the royal inner circle was mixed. Relief for some, discomfort for others, but most of all, silence. It was the silence that betrayed just how serious the move had been. Because in the world of royalty, true earthquakes don't come with explosions. They come with closed doors, solemn voices, and history being rewritten in quiet rooms with velvet curtains drawn. What Anne achieved in that room wasn't revenge. It was clarity. She had drawn a line between royal lineage and royal duty. And once that line was drawn, it became law, not because the public demanded it, but because the monarchy needed it to survive. The sentence that would send shockwaves through the royal sphere and ignite a global media inferno didn't come from a scandalous leak or an emotional outburst on television. It came from within the marble corridors of power. And it came not from a scandal-prone royal or a desperate PR handler, but from Princess and herself. 5 words, delivered with a glacial calm, pierced through generations of royal diplomacy. "You are not our family." Those who were present at the meeting have described the moment as nothing short of seismic. It didn't come at the beginning of the council session, where procedural talk and legal precedents dominated the floor. Nor was it hurled in a moment of rage or exasperation. No. This was not a slip of the tongue or an angry burst. It was a closing statement, a verdict, and stood, according to reports, as the vote was nearing its end and the room had entered a stillness only broken by the faint ticking of the chamber's antique clock. And then, deliberately, She looked at the official record keeper and stated, "Let it be recorded. In our hearts, and now by law, they are not our family." There was no gasp, no rebuttal. Just a silence so thick it almost had weight. Those seated around the polished oak table remained motionless, stunned not just by the words, but by the implications. This wasn't about bureaucracy anymore. This was emotional, philosophical, existential, and had not just questioned Harry and Meghan's loyalty, she had revoked their emotional standing inside the royal family itself. What gave her statement so much power wasn't just her status in the family. It was the fact that, and had, for years, been the steady compass when all others spun. She wasn't known for dramatics or cruelty. If anything, she was known for being too pragmatic, too silent in the face of chaos. So when she finally did speak from the soul, everyone knew it came not from impulse, but from long-simmering conviction. Those 5 words didn't just reflect disappointment. They confirmed rejection. Behind the scenes, it said that and had reached a personal tipping point months earlier. According to a longtime royal confidant, and felt that the damage caused by Harry and Meghan's public campaigns was not just reputational, it was corrosive. The Queen's passing in 2022 had left a void that Charles, still battling for public trust, could only partially fill. And with William focused on modernizing the monarchy's global image, and had taken it upon herself to be the bulwark of the old guard, the guardian of monarchy's code of silence, dignity, and service. She believed deeply that you couldn't have one foot in and one foot out of the crown. You were either all in, or you were not part of the family at all. That belief shaped every word of her now infamous statement. "You are not our family" wasn't about DNA. It was about allegiance, about action, about values. The statement immediately became the most talked about leak in royal circles since the Oprah interview. Palace aides, of course, refused to confirm or deny its authenticity. But insiders from multiple royal households later corroborated that the statement had indeed been made, off the record, but in the presence of every key decision-maker in the room. And even though it was not officially transcribed in the final vote summary, the emotional impact of Anne's words had cemented a new reality. The division was no longer just bureaucratic. It was spiritual. A bloodline had been emotionally excommunicated. For Harry, the emotional impact was reportedly devastating. Though he was not in the room during the vote, he was told of Anne's words within 24 hours, through a senior royal aide who believed he had a right to know. His initial reaction, sources say, was disbelief. Not fury, not tears, just quiet shock. Harry had always believed that Anne, while stern, still respected him as a man, that she might disapprove of his choices, but wouldn't cut him off completely. To hear that she had denounced him, not just as a prince, but as family, was more than a betrayal. It was a funeral bell. Meghan's response, however, was very different. According to sources close to her, she viewed the statement as predictable and revealing. In private, she allegedly said, "That's what they really think of us. They never considered us family. This just proves it." Her reaction was not of heartbreak, but of confirmation. She had long believed that the firm had marginalized her and Harry out of institutional self-preservation and thinly veiled prejudice. To her, Anne's words didn't end anything. They just exposed what had always been beneath the surface. And yet, for all Meghan's stoicism, the consequences of Anne's statement were far-reaching. Media outlets around the globe picked up on the line like a mantra. "You are not our family" appeared in headlines from New York to Nairobi, from Sydney to Singapore. Newspapers printed op-eds dissecting its meaning. Television anchors debated its moral and legal implications. Royal commentators called it the final blow to any hope of reconciliation. Some in the public were shocked by the ruthlessness. "There's still blood. You don't turn your back on blood," one woman told a BBC Street reporter in London. But others applauded its firmness. "They can't have it both ways," a man in Manchester said. "You either serve or you don't." And just being honest. And what about the Queen's legacy? Many speculated what the late monarch might have thought. Queen Elizabeth II was known for her deep sense of family, even to the point of overlooking scandals to protect the unity of the firm. Would she have approved of Anne's words? It's impossible to know. But insiders close to the Queen during her final years say she had grown weary of the ongoing turmoil Harry and Meghan brought to the institution. While she remained outwardly gracious, she was privately disappointed. Anne's statement, in many ways, may have been the vocalization of thoughts the Queen could never publicly express. But regardless of approval or disapproval, the damage or clarity was done. From that day forward, the royal family's internal maps had changed. There were no longer gray zones. No maybes. There was the crown, and there was everything else. And words didn't create the division. They solidified it. Behind palace gates, conversations shifted. There were no more hypotheticals about reconciliation. No more whispered dreams about Harry returning to support King Charles. No more soft diplomacy from within. And had thrown down the gauntlet and sealed the rift in royal concrete. Even younger royals, like Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, who had maintained warm ties with Harry and Meghan, were reportedly shaken. Their silence in the weeks that followed was interpreted by many as an acknowledgement of the new reality. Family functions became quieter, more constrained. There were no Christmas invites sent across the Atlantic. No mentions of Zoom calls between cousins. The silence grew louder than any spoken word. And yet, in the midst of this emotional and institutional upheaval, and herself remained unchanged. She returned to her duties, opening hospitals, attending royal banquets, riding in parades, as though she hadn't just dismantled a decades-long familial tie. For her, this wasn't a personal crusade. It was preservation. She did what needed to be done. Not for vengeance, not for legacy, but for survival. The monarchy had always relied on continuity, but in moments of threat, it relied on clarity. Anne's words provided that. Cold, simple, absolute. You are not our family. And from that moment on, the firm never looked back. Behind every royal rift lies a tangled web of personal grievances, public scandals, and private betrayals. The fissure between Princess and the Sussexes did not emerge overnight. It was the result of years of simmering tension, broken trust, and what many within the palace saw as a series of deliberate, damaging acts by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. To fully understand the weight behind Anne's decisive vote and her brutal statement, we must unravel the betrayals that paved the way. The first fissure appeared in early 2018, when Harry and Meghan announced their engagement. The union was initially met with cautious optimism by the firm, but it also came with challenges, cultural differences, intense media scrutiny, and a palpable sense of urgency to modernize the monarchy. Meghan's American background, outspoken personality, and Hollywood past unsettled many traditionalists, including Anne, who saw the importance of decorum and duty over celebrity. When Meghan officially joined the royal family, cracks began to show beneath the surface. Rumors circulated about clashes with staff, demands for privacy, and discomfort with royal protocol. Yet these were mostly whispered behind palace walls, kept from public ears. What changed everything was the explosive media campaign that began soon after Harry and Meghan's decision to step back as senior royals in 2020. The so-called Megxit shocked the monarchy. For centuries, the royal family had endured separations and departures, but none had been so public, so defiant, or so financially driven. The Sussexes' announcement wasn't just a retirement. It was a rejection of centuries-old customs, a declaration of independence from an institution they once vowed to serve. And ever the loyalist reportedly saw this move as the first betrayal. She believed that one could leave the family's official duties but maintain respect and discretion. Instead, Harry and Meghan launched a media offensive that would shatter that expectation. The 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview became a watershed moment. Accusations of racism within the royal family, neglect of Meghan's mental health, and refusal to support the couple unleashed a firestorm. For Anne, these claims were not just personal attacks. They were assaults on the monarchy's very foundation. And while other family members cautiously responded, and silence spoke volumes, she was not willing to dignify what she saw as public airing of private grievances. Following the interview, Harry's memoir, Spare, added fuel to the fire. Detailed accounts of his upbringing, strained relationships with family members, and revelations of royal secrecy portrayed a family fractured beyond repair. And who had long believed in keeping private matters private, saw this as a further breach of trust. The book was widely perceived inside the palace as a betrayal not just of family, but of institution. Meghan's actions compounded the sense of betrayal. From lucrative Netflix deals to launching podcasts and foundation projects branded around their royal connections, she was accused by and others of exploiting royal status for personal gain. What particularly rankled was the perception that while renouncing official duties, the Sussexes continued to leverage royal connections for financial profit, blurring the lines between private enterprise and public service. To Anne, this was the ultimate betrayal. Profiting off a system you publicly reject, all while disparaging it to the world. She reportedly expressed disbelief that Meghan could so openly undermine the very values the monarchy stood for. Harry's repeated interviews defending Meghan, coupled with his refusal to publicly denounce false claims or reintegrate into family events, only deepened Anne's conviction that the couple had no intention of repairing the relationship. The final straw came when Archie and Lilibet's titles were raised in public discourse, and saw the Sussexes' attempts to secure HRH status for their children as presumptuous and disrespectful. It was a brazen claim on a privilege she believed could only be earned through service and loyalty. To Anne, it felt like an attempt to rewrite royal rules to fit personal desires, rather than uphold tradition. By late 2024, multiple senior aides reported that Anne had grown increasingly vocal in private circles, describing Harry and Meghan's behavior as reckless and disloyal. She expressed concern that if left unchecked, this behavior would erode the monarchy's credibility irreparably. Her frustrations culminated in the decision to initiate the private council vote, marking a historic moment where the institution publicly drew a line in the sand. The betrayals, then, were not just about personal hurt. They were about the perceived threat to the monarchy's survival. Anne's vote was a response not only to broken family ties but to what she saw as an existential crisis, a monarchy at risk of losing its meaning in a modern world increasingly skeptical of inherited privilege. Titles in the British monarchy are not just honorary labels. They are symbols of status, privilege, and responsibility handed down through centuries of tradition. Understanding why Meghan and Harry's push to secure royal titles for their children sparked such fierce resistance from Princess Anne and others requires a deep dive into the history, rules, and emotional weight behind these distinctions. From the moment Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born in May 2019, the question of his royal title loomed large behind palace doors and in public discourse. Traditionally, male-line grandchildren of the monarch are entitled to the style of His or Her Royal Highness, HRH, and the title of Prince or Princess. But there are important nuances. Letters patent issued by King George V in 1917 limited these styles primarily to the monarch's children and grandchildren in the male line. This meant that Archie, as the son of the monarch's grandson Harry, technically did not qualify automatically for the title of prince. That said, royal prerogative allows the monarch to grant exceptions. For example, Prince William's children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were given HRH status. The question was whether King Charles III would extend the same courtesy to Archie and, later, Lilibet. Meghan and Harry's camp reportedly expected their children to receive similar recognition. However, the situation was complicated by Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from official royal duties. The couple's 2020 announcement signaled a distancing from the institution and its responsibilities. Many in the royal circle argued that with this step back, their children should not be granted full royal status. The line between privilege and duty, they said, could not be blurred. Meghan and Harry, however, seemed intent on preserving as much royal privilege for their children as possible. This was evident in numerous public appearances and interviews where Meghan highlighted the importance of their children being recognized as true members of the royal family. Securing HRH titles was not just about prestige. It was about identity and belonging. For Meghan, whose life before the royal family was marked by independence and self-made success, the titles represented a double-edged sword. They symbolized both inclusion in one of the world's most revered institutions and an opportunity to shield her children from the scrutiny she had endured. The couple appeared willing to navigate the complexities of royal protocol to ensure Archie and Lilibet's titles reflected their status as grandchildren of the monarch. Yet, to Princess and others, this ambition was problematic. The titles of Prince or Princess and the HRH style are not mere tokens. They come with expectations of service, sacrifice, and adherence to royal protocols, and, in particular, viewed the couple's attempts to claim these honors as presumptuous. The children were being raised outside the UK, without formal royal duties, and their parents had publicly criticized the monarchy. To grant them titles under these circumstances, and argued, would dilute the value and meaning of the honor. This tension reached a boiling point when rumors emerged in late 2024 that Meghan and Harry were preparing legal petitions and public campaigns to pressure the crown into formally recognizing Archie and Lilibet as prince and princess, respectively. Sources close to the palace described this move as a provocation, fueling fears that the couple sought to rewrite royal customs to fit their own narrative. Anne's response was swift and decisive. She argued that the monarchy must hold fast to tradition and that titles could not be used as bargaining chips or symbols of entitlement divorced from duty. In her view, Archie and Lilibet's royal status should reflect their parents' allegiance to the crown, not their celebrity or social ambitions. Moreover, there were concerns that public pressure to grant titles would exacerbate divisions within the royal family and erode public trust. The British public, though fascinated by the Sussexes, remained largely supportive of the monarchy's traditions and expected titles to carry weight and meaning beyond media headlines. This perspective was reinforced by constitutional experts who explained that while the monarch has the authority to grant or withhold titles, the decision is not merely a personal preference but carries significant historical and legal implications. Altering these conventions risks destabilizing centuries of established royal succession and honor. Within this context, the private royal council meeting chaired by and became an arena where these competing visions clashed. The question was clear. Should Archie and Lilibet receive royal titles despite their parents' departure from duty and ongoing criticism of the monarchy? Anne's position, supported by most council members, was firm no. The council's decision sent a clear message. Titles are privileges earned through loyalty and service, not merely inherited or demanded. For Anne, it was a reaffirmation of the monarchy's core values. For Meghan and Harry, it was a stark rebuke, signaling that royal privilege comes with responsibilities they had chosen to reject. This battle over titles was more than a dispute over names. It was a proxy for a deeper conflict about identity, belonging, and the future of the monarchy itself. It forced the institution to confront uncomfortable questions about modernization, tradition, and the limits of inclusion. The fallout from this decision continues to reverberate. Archie and Lilibet remain without HRH status, a situation unprecedented in recent royal history. The Sussexes have expressed disappointment but maintain their resolve to define their family's legacy on their own terms. Meanwhile, Princess Anne's vote stands as a testament to her belief that the monarchy must evolve without sacrificing its principles. A delicate balance she is determined to uphold, even if it means severing ties with her own nephew's family. In royal families around the world, lineage is everything. It is the invisible thread that ties the present to centuries of history, symbolizing legitimacy, heritage, and rightful succession. Within the British monarchy, this concept has been particularly sacrosanct. The idea of pure, unbroken royal bloodlines forms the foundation of the crown's authority. Yet, amid the turmoil surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a shadow loomed large, one rarely spoken aloud but deeply felt: lineage uncertainty. The whispers about Harry's paternity have existed in the public domain for decades, fueled by speculation and conspiracy theories. The most persistent of these center on James Hewitt, a former cavalry officer known for his affair with Princess Diana during her marriage to Prince Charles. For years, tabloids and royal commentators questioned whether Hewitt was Harry's biological father, citing resemblances and timing. Officially, both the royal family and Hewitt himself have denied these claims, with Charles consistently recognized as Harry's father. But the rumors never truly faded, particularly amongst certain factions within the royal family and their inner circle. The question of lineage, whether spoken or unspoken, carried significant weight when discussions about royal titles and legitimacy arose. In the private council meeting chaired by Princess Anne, the subject was reportedly broached with careful but unmistakable emphasis. According to palace insiders, and expressed concern that granting HRH status to Archie and Lilibet would cement into law a lineage clouded by public doubt. She pointed out that while bloodlines should ideally be unquestioned, the ongoing controversies around Harry's parentage presented an unprecedented challenge. The monarchy, she argued, must protect itself from any potential disruption that such uncertainty might cause in the future. This was not merely about family gossip. It was about safeguarding the monarchy's public image and its constitutional integrity. The British crown, centuries old and steeped in tradition, could ill afford to have its legitimacy questioned at the genetic level, especially when succession rights and royal privileges were involved. This line of reasoning was reinforced by historians and legal experts invited to advise the Royal Council. They emphasized that while the monarchy does not conduct genetic testing to confirm lineage, a practice considered invasive and disrespectful, public perception plays an equally important role. If the public begins to doubt the authenticity of royal bloodlines, the institution's mystique and authority could be severely undermined. And concerns extended beyond Harry himself to his children. Archie and Lilibet, born to parents whose lineage and loyalties were already under scrutiny, represented a new kind of challenge for the monarchy. Their status as grandchildren of the monarch was complicated not just by their parents' choices, but by the very ambiguity surrounding their father's heritage. This unease was compounded by the Sussexes' increasing distance from the royal family, their outspoken criticisms, and their refusal to fully engage in royal duties. To many within the palace, it was as if the traditional links that bind royal bloodlines, duty, loyalty, service, were fraying, leaving behind only questions and uncertainty. Some royal watchers suggest that Anne's decision to emphasize lineage concerns was also strategic. By highlighting these uncertainties, she was not only protecting the monarchy from internal discord, but also providing a defensible rationale for denying Archie and Lilibet royal titles beyond mere protocol. It was a way of saying that this decision was grounded not in personal animus, but in the preservation of centuries-old principles. The Sussex camp has consistently dismissed these rumors as baseless and hurtful. Meghan and Harry have maintained that the speculation around Harry's parentage is a racist and sexist distraction meant to undermine their legitimacy and distract from the real issues. They have publicly condemned the spread of misinformation and reaffirmed their children's rightful place in the royal lineage. Yet, in the closed rooms of power, lineage uncertainty remained an elephant in the room that could not be ignored. It cast a long shadow over every discussion about titles, privileges, and succession. For Princess Anne and others, acknowledging this reality was necessary, however uncomfortable it might be. The dilemma reflects a deeper tension within modern monarchies everywhere. How to reconcile centuries-old notions of bloodline purity with today's more complex realities of family, identity, and public perception. The British royal family is grappling with this challenge in real time, forced to make decisions that will define its future for generations to come. In this context, Anne's stance was clear. The monarchy cannot afford ambiguity. To maintain its legitimacy, it must be able to present an unassailable line of succession grounded in unquestioned lineage. And so, Archie and Lilibet's claims to royal titles were set aside, not just because of their parents' choices, but because of the lingering shadow of uncertainty that surrounded their bloodline. The impact of this decision extends far beyond the palace walls. It raises difficult questions about identity, belonging, and the very nature of family in a world where genetics, perception, and tradition collide. It forces the monarchy to confront uncomfortable truths about itself and to chart a course that balances history with the realities of the modern era. In the complex tapestry of monarchy, values form the warp and weft that hold everything together. Honor, loyalty, discretion, service. These have been the guiding principles that shape the institution for centuries. For Princess Anne, these crown values are not abstract ideals but inviolable rules, the very essence of what it means to be royal. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle began to openly challenge and, in her eyes, betray these values, it became the breaking point that compelled Anne to take decisive action. Anne's perception of betrayal goes beyond the personal affronts that have so often dominated royal headlines. It is rooted in a fundamental conviction that the monarchy is a sacred institution designed to serve the nation, not the individual whims or ambitions of its members. To her, Harry and Meghan's actions over the past several years, publishing memoirs, launching lucrative media deals, and publicly airing grievances, signified a gross departure from this ethos. The Sussexes' media ventures, including multi-million-dollar Netflix contracts, Spotify podcasts, and best-selling books, were seen by and many within the firm as monetizing royal status for personal gain. It wasn't merely the financial aspect that disturbed her, but the way in which confidential family matters and palace affairs were commodified for global consumption. This was, in her mind, not just inappropriate, it was a betrayal of the trust placed in them as members of the royal family, and reportedly viewed the Sussexes' public narrative filled with accusations of racism, neglect, and mistreatment within the palace as a direct assault on the crown's reputation. To air such intimate family disputes on international platforms was unprecedented and, to many royals, unforgivable. It contravened the long-standing principle of royal discretion, where personal difficulties are kept behind closed doors for the sake of unity and respect, beyond the media exposure, and took issue with the Sussexes' refusal to adhere to royal responsibilities and protocols. Their voluntary withdrawal from official duties was not the betrayal itself, but their simultaneous demand for continued privileges and recognition was. And the idea that one could step away from the monarchy's burdens yet still claim its benefits was contradictory and untenable. This contradiction reached a critical point when Meghan and Harry sought HRH titles for their children, and saw this as emblematic of the wider pattern: taking without giving, criticizing without contributing, separating from duty but not from entitlement. Such actions, she believed, undermined the monarchy's integrity and weakened public confidence, and concern extended to the monarchy's future. She feared that allowing the Sussexes to flout traditional values would set a dangerous precedent, encouraging future royals to prioritize personal gain over collective responsibility. This, she warned, could erode the monarchy's moral authority and jeopardize its survival. In private discussions, and reportedly expressed profound disappointment that Harry and Meghan had not sought reconciliation or dialogue within the family before launching public attacks. She felt their approach was unnecessarily divisive and harmful, not just to individual family members but to the institution as a whole. The public fallout from the Sussexes' actions also troubled and deeply. Polls showed fluctuating support for the monarchy, with many Britons feeling disillusioned by the constant media scandals, and believed that upholding crown values was essential to restoring faith in the institution and preserving its relevance. Her decision to lead the vote against granting titles to Archie and Lilibet was, therefore, more than a procedural matter. It was a moral stance, a declaration that royal privileges are inseparable from duty, loyalty, and respect for the institution. The final straw was not a single event, but a culmination of perceived betrayals that left Anne convinced that firm boundaries had to be drawn. By rejecting the Sussexes' claims, she sought to reinforce the idea that the monarchy is not a personal playground but a sacred trust that demands honor above all else. This stance has profound implications. It signals to current and future generations of royals that actions have consequences and that the crown's values are non-negotiable. It also serves as a warning to those who might consider using royal status for self-promotion or profit at the expense of tradition and service. For Princess Anne, this was not about punishment but preservation. It was a painful but necessary step to protect an institution she has devoted her life to serving. King Charles III's reign began under the heavy shadows of familial conflict and public scrutiny, a mantle more challenging than any predecessor had faced. In the unfolding saga between Princess Anne and the Sussexes, Charles's role is both pivotal and paradoxical. His relative silence during the decisive royal council meeting has been interpreted by many as indecision, yet this silence itself speaks volumes about the complex dilemmas he faces, balancing family loyalty, institutional duty, and public expectation. Charles's history with Harry has been fraught with tension, dating back decades. The strain of Diana's tragic death, coupled with Harry's rebellious youth and eventual estrangement, created a gulf that neither time nor circumstance has fully bridged. For Charles, the challenge has been not only to reconcile with his son, but to uphold the monarchy's dignity amid growing internal discord. At the private council meeting, Charles reportedly maintained a reserved demeanor, refraining from vocal opposition but also not openly endorsing Princess Anne's motion to deny Archie and Lilibet royal titles. Sources suggest that Charles's approach reflected a deep ambivalence, a wish to preserve family bonds without compromising the crown's authority. Insiders describe Charles as a man caught between the personal and the political. On one hand, he is a father torn by the rift with his son and concerned about the damage to his family's image. On the other, he is the monarch, responsible for safeguarding an institution larger than any individual relationship. This silence has drawn criticism and speculation. Some view it as weakness or a failure to act decisively. Others interpret it as a strategic choice. Allowing the royal council, led by Anne, to make a firm stand while he manages the political fallout more quietly. Prince William's position is perhaps even more complex. As heir apparent, William is charged with continuing the monarchy's legacy, yet he is also Harry's brother and Archie and Lilibet's uncle. The emotional and political stakes for William are enormous. William has publicly supported the crown's traditions and made efforts to modernize the monarchy in ways that appeal to younger generations. However, behind closed doors, his relationship with Harry has deteriorated, marked by mutual grievances and hurt. The publication of Harry's memoir Spare and the couple's public interviews have been particularly painful for William, who feels misrepresented and betrayed. Despite this, William reportedly struggled to take a clear stance during the council vote. He did not actively oppose Anne's motion but refrained from championing it, reflecting his internal conflict between family loyalty and institutional responsibility. William's dilemma extends beyond personal feelings. As future king, he must navigate the delicate balance between maintaining the monarchy's image and managing fractured family dynamics. His decisions will impact not only his generation but the institution's survival in an era of intense scrutiny. Both Charles and William's restrained responses highlight the challenges of leadership within a modern royal family. Their silence contrasts sharply with Anne's forthrightness, underscoring different approaches to crisis management. Within palace circles, there is concern that the lack of a strong, unified front may weaken the monarchy's position. Yet others argue that discretion and measured responses are essential to preserving stability amid ongoing tensions. The public, meanwhile, watches closely. Polls indicate mixed feelings about the royal family's internal disputes, with many sympathizing with Harry and Meghan's desire for independence, while others support the monarchy's need for order and tradition. Charles and William's dilemmas symbolize a monarchy at a crossroads, struggling to reconcile personal relationships with public duties, tradition with change, unity with division. Princess Anne's decisive action, contrasted with their silence, reflects a broader debate within the institution about how to respond to modern challenges. As this chapter unfolds, the question remains, will Charles and William find a way to heal these rifts, or will their silence deepen the fractures within the royal family? In a secretive and dramatic move, Princess Anne has led a private royal vote to block Archie and Lilibet from ever receiving the coveted HRH titles. Sources reveal this isn't just about titles. It's about lineage doubts, allegations of betrayal, and a fierce battle to protect the crown's legacy. Stay tuned as we uncover the explosive details behind Anne's brutal statement that's shaking the monarchy to its core.